From the land of lakes, this is 10,000 Takes, brought to you by Minnesota Score Radio. Wally and Eric back for yet another week. We slice and dice the always busy, always topical, super saturated Minnesota sports scene. And here we are, late September, early October. The plate is full of topics for you to chew on.
I'll say. Your Vikings on the other side of the pond. The Gophers ranked coming into this weekend. The Twins wrapping things up. The Timberwolves and Wild getting started. Where do you want to start?
Minnesota United continues a marathon MLS
season. Oh, my
season.
goodness. That season starts in January and ends in January.
It really does. No wonder they're in such good shape.
Yes.
They don't ever stop running.
Well, we used to call it cross country with a ball. Wow. That's soccer, baby.
Running around on the pitch. Yeah, no doubt. Well, I guess we start where the Minnesota Vikings and New Orleans Saints playing across the pond in London. Another one of these international games that the NFL just wants to jam down our throats.
Are they necessary?
No, I don't think they are. I know that Roger Goodell has this fantasy that London's going to get a team someday and maybe even another team in Europe. But you know what? Give it up. I just don't think they're foaming at the mouth over there in the UK or the European Union about getting an NFL team. It's all about soccer and rugby. They're more interested in Minnesota United.
Well, they probably are, although I think some folks would come over here and look at the MLS and say, we got the Premier League.
Well, they do. There's that. But, no, I just think it's probably run its course, in my opinion. You got an 8:30 kickoff a.m.?
Yeah.
I mean, what Viking fan wants to do that?
Yeah. Well, and you and I experienced it 9 years ago. We were there in 2013 when the Vikings played the Steelers. And we've talked about this in the past, but you pick up the paper the next day, and there's this small article on like 3-4 pages in from the back page, because the back page is where the sports start and the paper's there.
The tabloids.
The tabloids, as it were. And there was this small article about the Vikings and Steelers. Now, don't get me wrong. If you were at that game, the stadium was full. We were at Wembley 9 years ago. The stadium was full. It was a raucous crowd. And the people who were there for the game. But the general public, because we stayed out just outside of London, people, we were riding the buses and the trains, they didn't know anything about this game or care about it.
I think you're exactly right. And, oh, by the way, that's the largest home crowd the Vikings have ever had when they played at Wembley against Pittsburgh. There was 80K in the house.
No, it was a huge crowd.
And there was a buzz in the venue and the surrounding areas outside.
It was fun. It was like
Wembley.
a Super Bowl type of setting.
I'm with you. When you got into London or rode the tube around, the city, there was no buzz. There weren't a lot of people wearing purple or Steelers black and gold. So the NFL goes over there and they generate some enthusiasm. But with the locals, I don't think it's a huge deal. And I talked about an 8:30 a.m. start if you're a Minnesota Vikings fan. How about being a Saints fan? Don't they get off Bourbon Street around 8 a.m.? I mean, they're not going to get to sleep down there in New Orleans, where it's all party all the time.
So the 32nd team, there's only one team in the NFL who has never played
they're going
over there. They're going next week, I believe it is.
Yeah.
Your Green Bay Packers.
Is the UK ready for
cheese and beer?
Cheese and beer. Well, we know they've got the Packer fans will drink a lot of pints.
Yes, they will.
And they will be ordering up a lot of cheese. And that is an interesting confluence, right? Wisconsin, Green Bay fans going into the UK, London.
Well, they'll be there in droves.
Oh, they will.
It's an excuse for the Packer fans to get a little culture in their lives.
Well, and then you have the New York Giants playing in that game too.
True.
So you're going to have New York City and New Jersey, and you get the largest market in the NFL and the smallest, and they're meeting in London.
Of all places, on the heels of the death of the Queen. And by the way, there's also a Jacksonville-Denver game. So there's 3 London games this year, or 3 UK games
And there
this
is
year.
a game in Munich, Germany too, right?
Yeah, that's too much. Okay, let's talk some Gopher football, because Mo Ibrahim who broke Darrell Thompson's all-time record for touchdowns a week ago, he's being mentioned as a Heisman Trophy candidate now. Are you on board with that? Do you think that he has a real opportunity to win the Heisman?
Absolutely. You know, I said it before the season started that if the stars align, he could get in that conversation. First of all, I want to salute Mo Ibrahim for overcoming a devastating injury.
No doubt.
And he looks better than ever. He's running hard. Going into the game against Purdue this week, 567 yards, 8 touchdowns. And he's a definite NFL prospect. And I can't remember too many times when we would talk about a Minnesota Gopher football player just being in the Heisman conversation. And really what this comes down to, I think, for Ibrahim, is they just have to keep winning. If they keep winning and he keeps doing his thing, then, I mean, when you're ranked, suddenly you do have more cachet as a potential Heisman Trophy candidate. I think it's great. And let's wait, 2-3 more weeks. But if this continues, the Gophers, their PR staff, sports information, they need to start cranking out those stats to all the media folks across the USA. Make people know that Mo is a Heisman-type guy.
Is Tanner Morgan an NFL quarterback? We're going to find that out pretty soon, too. He's looked awfully good through the early part of the season. Of course, that non-conference schedule didn't give him much of a challenge, but he's looked pretty good with Chirac back as his OC.
He sure has. And, you look at Mo, you look at Tanner, some of these other Gophers, they've been around, it seems like a decade, right? So I think from an NFL perspective, they'll come into your system if you draft them seasoned. I mean, they've played a lot of football. There's some value to that. It's not like a one-and-done deal here.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's a 7-and-done.
Yeah, very much so. All right.
So stick around. A lot more coming up. We're going to talk with Joe Nathan, one of the all-time great Minnesota Twins, and see if the Twinkies can be fixed. This is 10K Takes, your UK ticket.
I've been meaning to give you these for many years. I think they're perfect.
Maya?
Oh, I love your earrings. Why didn't you try these?
It isn't just about vision. It's about care. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
$10,000 Takes rolls along. And I guess we got to talk some baseball. I was trying to avoid it through the first segment, but your Minnesota Twins rounding things out here. And who better than to talk Minnesota Twins and pitching in particular? Our good friend Joe Nathan, the Twins Hall of Famer, all-time saves leader in Twins history. Joe, obviously a huge disappointment for the Minnesota Twins this year. They're talking about, the injuries, and they certainly have had plenty of them. But I think it goes beyond that. I mean, when you're in first place for the majority of the season. Cleveland wins the division, but the Twins held first place for most of the season. There has to be some changes and some thought of changes going forward. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think anytime, I think you take the positives and negatives. They got to go into the offseason. I think the biggest thing for them now is to really kind of see what the holes are and see what they can improve on and those little tweaks, because obviously they were in it for most of the year. So they're not far off, which is a good thing. That's one of the positives. They could find some pieces here and there and plug in some guys maybe here and there that they could pick up on free agency or maybe in the minor league system and plug something in to get things going for next year. The good thing is, like I said, they're not too far off. The bad thing is, it's easier said than done. It is easier to sit there and go, oh, we need to do this, we need to do that, than to go out and actually find those pieces. So, and with that said, they're probably going to lose some guys in the free agent market as well. So, there's going to be some work to do. There's going to be some plugging in. The injuries are part of it. I think that played a huge factor for them, but I think that's also a factor for most teams. You're going to deal with injuries throughout the course of 162 games. So you really can't fall back on injuries per se, because everybody deals with that.
Rocco is chained to analytics and pitch counts, and he believes in rest. And I jokingly say he puts these guys in bubble wrap. If you're a player on the market, is that something that entices you to want to play for Minnesota? Or are you saying, I don't know if that's really my style. I'm a grinder. I want to be out there every day. I don't want to be yanked if I'm having a good start.
Yeah, I think that's going to be based on the individual, based on who you're talking to, who has a chance to maybe come over here and if they will pay attention to something like that. I think, for me, the old school guy that's a grinder that wants to be out there, that's kind of the player that I've always, if I'm a coach, I would love to have somebody that wants the ball every day and wants to continue to go out there in the 7th, 8th, 9th inning, at least have that mentality to finish a game or pitch the 5th straight day of that week. Those are the guys I think you want. I get the rest here and there, and I get the analytics side, but I think you got to have a good blend of old school and the analytics to really, have that gut feeling kind of later on in the year to really kind of put it over the top. For me, it's going to be about who do they talk to, and some guys are going to like that fact that they get extra rest to maybe be stronger later in the year, and other guys are going to be like, listen, I'm better if I just keep going and going and going and going until I can.
Yeah. And in that same vein, I think that when you look at the Twins roster, there's one guy who has spoken out against this, and it was Sonny Gray. And he doesn't want to come out of the game. He has talked about the fact that, being in the game as long as possible is what he wants to do. I think Dylan Bundy might have mentioned it, but Gray was really outspoken. This is the kind of guy you want on your team, isn't it?
1,000%. I think, that's a positive. That reminds me of the elite pitchers in the game, the Justin Verlanders, the Max Scherzers, the guys that basically go out there and think I'm going 9 innings right now, and I give our team the best chance to win when I'm on the mound. So, I think Sonny has that similar mindset that he is one of those top guys, and he gives the team the best chance when he is on the mound. And that's the way you want your guys thinking. I don't care if you're a starter or a reliever. You better think you're their best option when you're on the mound, or things usually don't go that well. That means your confidence isn't where it needs to be. So, him saying that, I think is something that you should want as a manager, as a coach, a guy that wants the ball every time and wants to go 9 innings every time he steps on the mound.
On the flip side, Joe, are the Cleveland Guardians now the new blueprint or template for a mid-market, small market team? Their payroll is low. They have a veteran manager with a World Series ring in Terry Francona. They do have a horse in Shane Bieber. Jose Ramirez is a stud offensively and defensively. But then they have a lot of young, energetic guys, and they just go out and play hard, and they seem to be almost the anti-analytics team. Are they the new model for some of these ball clubs?
Well, I think they're the new model this year. I think what you just mentioned of the Guardians kind of reminds me of a club that I used to play for in Minnesota.
Yes.
So
The Piranhas.
the Piranhas were there. So, it's one of those things where I think, again, it's that old school mentality that you got to mix in with some of the analytics, So I think what the Guardians are doing this year is something that has been done for a while. We had a bulldog in Johan Santana, and then we had a bunch of young dudes that came to play every day with crazy energy, and then we had some superstars sprinkled in too with Mauer and Morneau and guys like that. So, it's one of those things where they have that mix right now, and they have a pretty good momentum going into this end of this season too. So, if you're a team about to play them in the playoffs, you got to be a little worried about the Guardians. And, they look very, very good and very poised to make a run at this thing.
And what I find interesting is that this is a team that does not rely on power. I think that they're second to last in the American League in home runs. And they're a team that's going to go the other way. They're going to hit a sac fly. They're going to bunt the baseball. The things that you mentioned, the Piranhas and your clubs did back, 15, 20 years ago. And I think you may see other teams try to duplicate this because, that, like Eric just pointed out, this might be the new blueprint for somebody who doesn't want to spend a lot of money on players that hit home runs.
For sure. I think again, did it work for us in the playoffs? No. But we kind of ran into some buzzsaws here and there. But at the same time, I think playing that small ball usually should work in the playoffs because you're going to be playing against and going against guys on the mound that are the best at their craft. And they're usually not going to give up too many runs. Usually it's going to be a low scoring affair, 1 or 2 run ball game. And usually the guys that can move runners along, bunt some guys over, get a guy in with less than 2 outs and a man on third base. Usually those teams can go deep if the pitching staff can hold the form.
A team I follow closely, the LA Dodgers, they've had incredible regular season success over the last 10 years or so, but only one World Series trophy. Is it World Series or bust for the Dodgers as good as they've been?
It's got to be. I think how good they've been this regular season. I think if they fell short in any round, it's going to be a disappointment for them. I don't know if looking on the outside, it's much that because, at least for me, I know how hard it is for a team to continue to just keep running through playoffs and playoff series and how hard it is to win consecutive series like that. So looking on the outside, it's probably not as much as the disappointment they will have, and they will feel like they fell short if it's not a World Series championship.
All right, put your Twins general manager hat on. If you had an opportunity to sign, I'm not saying a specific player, but a free agent or bring in a couple of players in what positions, what would you aim for in this offseason to move this club forward?
Well, I mean, listen, it's always going to be on pitching. I think, we're no matter how you kind of slice and dice this thing, it's going to be how much pitching can they bring in? How much, and this is on both ends. This will be starting pitching all the way through the bullpen. I mean, it's going to be about bringing in arms and bringing in guys that want the ball for 9 innings and bringing in that type of starting pitcher, and then just deepen your bullpen.
And finally, somehow, some way, they've got to get 120 to 140 games out of Byron Buxton.
Oh boy,
can that happen?
Man, I hope so, and it's really nowhere to blame. I mean, he plays the game the way he does, and I wouldn't change a thing because when he's out on the field, he's obviously a game changer, and he changes how that team wins, how that team plays. So,
Joe, great analysis, good stuff, and we'll catch up with you again, I'm sure, very soon.
Look forward to it.
Thanks, Joe.
All right, he is Joe Nathan, the Twins' all-time leader in saves, and of course, in the Twins Hall of Fame. Eric and I will be back with more Hall of Fame comments after this timeout.
Taxes don't have to be taxing, not with Keller Tax Service. For 20 years, Linda Keller has prepared taxes for all types of professions and businesses. She has perfected the virtual tax appointment through phone or video. With Keller Tax Service, you never leave home. Call KTS at 320-352-0013 or check out Keller Tax Service on Facebook. Take the anxiety out of taxing. Keller Tax Service, 320-352-0013 or check them out on Facebook.
I've been meaning to give you these for many years. I think they're perfect.
Maya?
Oh, I love your earring. Why didn't you try these?
It isn't just about vision, it's about care. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl. "10,000 Takes," Wally and Eric.
Your Minnesota Twins, not only are they going to have to fix stuff on the field, namely, as Joe Nathan mentioned, the pitching staff, they're going to have some off-the-field fixes as well. And a new scoreboard is going to be put in. It sounds like new uniforms are coming, a new logo design. Holy Toledo, they're just going all out.
And you and I have gone to a lot of games at trendy Target Field. There's a new skyscraper beyond the right center field bleachers. There
Right.
will be a new, I guess it's an apartment complex shooting up above the left field stands.
Yep.
You might have a version of Wrigleyville here developing
Well, yes
in
and
the
no.
Minneapolis Loop area. So that's cool. I do have a suggestion for the Twins. though. I believe the Twins should hire Tom Brady and Ken Dorsey, who's the offensive coordinator, Buffalo Bills.
Oh,
the guy who went viral a few days ago.
The laptop smashing Ken
he
Dorsey?
smashed laptops and surfaces and tablets just like Tom Brady did a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
I think the Twins should bring in Brady and Dorsey and have Rocco and Derek and Thad give them their laptops or Surface or tablets or whatever they use and let these guys smash them to smithereens, blow them to bits, and start managing and general managing with your gut and your eyes and your instinct.
I'm all for that because we saw way too much of that.
Oh, boy.
Analytics and laptop this past season. I mean, the season's still going technically. It's going to end very soon. Yeah. Well, the makeover that we talked about, though, the uniforms, I mean, how many different uniforms do we have now for this team? Every time they run out there, they've either got all blue on or they got these things. They look like softball uniforms.
They really do. I literally am confused. If I go to a game like when the Twins are playing Cleveland or Boston, say, it takes me a while to figure out who is who because those are the same color schemes, and one team might have all red on, the other might have navy blue, or stick with something. Get some tradition going again. I really think the Twins are definitely in need of a Minnesota makeover uniform-wise. Now, I believe it's the starting pitcher who chooses the uniform combination for each game. So
Really?
somebody needs to give these pitchers some fashion tips.
Oh boy, yeah, it hasn't been good. I mean, as you said, I just get lost in all this, and I know that part of the goal is to sell more merchandise, right? I mean, isn't that why they have multiple different looks and everything like that? But are you really going to sell more just because it's different?
They're going to have a City Connect uniform as well. We've seen the Timberwolves do that in the NBA. I would, if I were running the show, I'd have 2 different home uniforms, and I'd have maybe a couple on the road, and then I'd have one of these color rush things where even the Dodgers were all blue for a game. And at first I was like, whoa, the Dodgers? Team tradition, but it worked. Once in a while. But don't have 8 combinations. It's confusing.
It didn't work in Boston. They looked like highlighter pens. That was ridiculous.
Well, they
what the Red
strayed from
Sox
their
wore.
colors. At least the Dodgers kept it blue.
Yeah, it's a disaster.
Shouldn't the Red Sox always have some shade of red in their uniforms?
You would think, but no, they went highlighter yellow or
my
whatever,
goodness.
green or whatever that color was. Just terrible. All right, we've got one segment to go. Takes of the day coming up. You won't want to miss that. Stay with us.
I've been meaning to give you these for many years. I think they're perfect.
Maya?
Oh, I love your earring. Why didn't you try these?
It isn't just about vision, it's about care. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
It's another episode of 10K Takes Television. Thanks for tuning us in. Wally and Eric with you. We'll have takes of the day coming up here shortly, but we haven't touched a lot on Minnesota versus New Orleans in London as far as the breakdown of the game. How do you see it?
Well, Jameis Winston has not been very good so far, but the Saints are a so-so team. They're 1-2 coming in. The Vikings are 2-1. You can make the argument the Vikings could easily be 1-2. They did not play particularly well against Detroit. They put together a couple of late drives and won the football game, so give them credit for that. I like the Vikings in this one. I think if you look at their schedule, I think that they really need to win this week, and they need to beat the Bears next week because things get a little dicey very soon. You know, they got to play at Miami. They have to play at Buffalo. They still have all 3 divisional games on the road. I think that this is a must-win for the Vikings in some sense because, you know, you're not going to run the table on some of these games that I just talked about. That's for sure.
And let's see if the defense can play better, even though they got the victory over Detroit, as you mentioned. There were times when the Lions were gashing Minnesota.
Yeah,
you know,
no
especially
doubt.
through the air with Jared Goff in that passing game. So we'll
doubt.
see if there's an improvement from the purple. Also, there's a chance because of Hurricane Ian, which is battering Florida, that the Sunday night Kansas City at Tampa Bay game, a Super Bowl 55 rematch, that game could be played elsewhere. And one of the venues coming up as a possible relocation spot is US Bank Stadium in Minneapolis. Can you imagine if that game came here? That might be the best game ever at the Glass House since Super Bowl 52 when Tom Brady and New England took on Nick Foles in Philadelphia. This would be Brady and Mahomes. Obviously, we hope it stays in Tampa. We want things to settle down there, but hurricanes are hurricanes, and they're going to do what they're going to do.
Yeah, no question. All right, I'm told time for takes of the day.
All right, are you a grumpy Guardian? Are you a cranky Yankee? You've got to be a giddy Guardian, right?
Yeah, I think so. You know, this is how giddy. I almost wore this tie today.
Boy.
My throwback Cleveland Indians tie, but I spared you that much.
Thank you. All right.
Yeah, you got to be giddy if you are a Cleveland baseball fan. Actually, if you're an American League Central fan, looking at what Cleveland has done with so little. One of the lowest payrolls in baseball, the youngest team in baseball. They don't hit many home runs. What they do is they pitch, they play small ball, and they run the bases, and they play defense. They possibly could have 2 Gold Gloves in that starting 9 out there. With Jimenez at second base and Straw in center field. And Stephen Kwan, possible Rookie of the Year candidate. I mean, they really do things and have done things the right way. Maybe it's something the Minnesota Twins should look at, developing pitchers, developing young talent, because that's how they've been able to win this year, and there's no question. And look, the Twins were in first place more than any team in the AL Central this year. They were in from, late April to early September. And Cleveland wins the division. And it's something that they should take a long, hard look at because they have won it doing it a whole different way.
And the mood meter says you are a giddy Guardian, and our viewers out there can't wait until you unveil a Guardian's tie.
It's not going to happen.
Wow. Okay.
I'll wear the old one first.
My take of the day, we're only 3 weeks into this young NFL season.
Yes.
There's only 2 perfect teams left. That would be Philadelphia and Miami. The only team in the history of the NFL to run the table, 50 years ago, the 1972 Miami Dolphins went 17-0. Right. And since then, every team that's been perfect, once they lose a game, those 72 Dolphins celebrate with champagne and they toast their version of perfection. Well, what's going to happen? Philadelphia eventually will probably lose. What about if the 2022 Miami Dolphins keep winning? Do the 72 Dolphins, do Larry Zonka, Bob Greasy, Paul Warfield, that group, do they keep cheering against their team? I mean, I think they've got to rethink this. They've got to be on board with the 2022 Dolphins. Now, it won't last, but they got to be cheering for them, right?
Yeah, well, they're not going to go 20-0. Don't worry about it.
Almost impossible. But do they celebrate after they lose?
Ooh, I don't know.
They better not.
Might not go over well down there.
All right, let's FedEx out those thank yous. One to Alex Yambrick, David Well, Joe Nathan, for Wally and Rocky. I'm Eric saying so long. This is 10K Takes, your sports ticket.